So welcome to Placing People First, a podcast by Next Phase where we celebrate innovations and ideas in the fast-growing world of life sciences. A very warm welcome this morning to Kate Barclay, who is a very passionate advocate for developing skills and talent within STEM. Really looking forward to talking with Kate about her perspective on the cell and gene therapy sector in the UK, including where we are at the moment with cell and gene innovation, the main challenges the industry is facing currently in terms of personnel, and the different ways it's continuing to innovate. This particular episode is aimed very much at senior leaders, at hiring managers and HR within advanced therapy businesses. We know that there are significant skill shortages within the advanced therapy sector, and we know that there is a much lesser number of people with the skills required than there are actual vacancies. So at Next Phase, we're always looking at sort of celebrating and sharing different ideas that companies are doing and bringing in to bring on board and develop new talent. So Kate, let's start with you and your own background. So you've got a PhD in, am I right in saying biochemical engineering?
Yep, biochemical engineering, yep.
And I see you started your career with about 15 years or so working within manufacturing, so working within big pharma manufacturing production. But it was really interesting to see that a few years ago you moved away from that, or seem to have moved away from that, into something more based around talent development and skills development. So just wondered, as a bit of an introduction really, what was it that led you down that route in your own career?
Sure. Yes, so my PhD was biochemical engineering, and I went into commercial manufacturing following completion of my PhD. And then I had opportunities to go sort of back in that drug product pipeline and work in R&D and clinical manufacturing. So seeing both sides of sort of that high throughput commercial manufacturing and then development of new medicines. I worked initially in parental manufacturing, so in aseptic manufacturing environments, and then moved into devices and then latterly solid dose manufacturing. Having covered all of those different formulation types, I really wanted to have a broader view across the business, and moved into a secondment opportunity within HR, which gave me access to all the different commercial aspects of the business, as well as having all my experience in manufacturing. Also took with me all of the experience within manufacturing of trying to bring in new talents, and I, whilst in manufacturing, chaired the trailblazer for life science apprenticeships, developing new apprenticeships. So within my role in HR, I was able to bring in that new and early talent to help the manufacturing facilities grow their own talent.
I mean, it's a really interesting career move to, I suppose you had the direct experience firsthand of working within that kind of environment to understand what kind of skills these people would need to learn if they were maybe coming in from other sectors.
Yeah, there aren't many engineers that move into HR, that's for sure. And also sort of developing my leadership and my commercial awareness of the business, I think is another string to the bow. And it's certainly sort of one of those skills areas at the moment that we're in quite short supply of, in terms of those engineers and scientists who've got a really deep understanding of the commercial business. So that's, in terms of a smaller organisation, and that's where my thoughts were in terms of progressing my career, was to move from large pharma into smaller organisations. So to have that understanding of sort of the external environment, investments and commercial sales and marketing knowledge was really important to me.
Yeah, fantastic. I remember when we spoke before, you mentioned that you in your role, you perform quite a wide variety of different consultancy to different organisations, particularly around the different catapult organisations. And I know that you help to develop early talent programs across different larger and smaller businesses. So not just cell and gene therapy catapult, but also high value manufacturing catapult and others. So what would you say are the particular challenges that cell and gene therapy organisations are facing relative to other fast growing innovative sectors?
Yeah, I think there are probably a number of different aspects. I think for cell and gene therapy, it's really new. So attracting new talent into that sort of area is a real challenge. I think a lot of people think that, there's just a whole load of scientists stood around in white coats, fiddling about with DNA and doing some really high level science, and absolutely that's there. But we're running businesses as well, and we have manufacturing processes, and we have we need engineers, and we need bioprocessing experience. So there's lots of jobs. So attracting people into those, I think, is one. Attracting new talent. But then I guess attracting people from other sectors who can transfer those skills into cell and gene therapy. I think there's a huge skills gap. So attracting talent is one. I think the other challenge within cell and gene is that the record investment that we've seen in cell and gene means that there is a huge amount of scale up going on. So organisations are scaling really rapidly right now. They're growing really fast. So being able to attract that talent quickly and being able to get them on board quickly and being able to grow with that organisation really quickly is a key challenge. So some of the programmes that I've worked on, like apprenticeship programmes, you bring people in, from day one, and they grow with that organisation from day one. They learn on the job, and they see that organisation go from, a small spin out to a larger organisation that's now, producing clinical material, if not commercial material. So that's a challenge. And then that manufacturing aspect is a real challenge. These manufacturing processes for cell and gene aren't well established. So having people who understand and can develop and can work with those processes and have all that bioprocessing knowledge is a challenge. And then across all of that is the regulatory and quality environment, which is evolving for cell and gene therapy products. It's probably fair to say these are a new kind of product. So to have people with the skills and the talent to move into those sorts of roles, there isn't a huge pool of people waiting to move into these jobs. We need to develop people while we are, developing the regulations and the quality processes.
One of the things that's so exciting about it is because it is so new, but yeah, I mean, it's clearly a challenge. And if you've got companies who are wanting to scale up enormously and they have so many vacancies they need to fill in quick succession, they can't necessarily then bring on lots of people who need to be trained up from scratch. So it is a real challenge. You're a very keen advocate of apprenticeships, so I appreciate it. It's a very important part of what you do. So I mean, apprenticeships are evidently one of the best ways to hire and develop people with less experience. But what advice would you give to HR managers who are maybe meeting internal resistance, about setting up or maybe expanding their in-house apprenticeship programs?
Yeah, so I think there's still a lot of misconceptions around apprenticeships in terms of it's a school leaver who hasn't got a clue about the business environment. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think the apprentices that we have in the advanced therapist community, they are self-starters. They are people who've thought differently about their career path. They're people who've perhaps come across resistance to doing it in the first place, but have still gone and done it. They show a really strong motivation for doing something different. They are really hardworking, really smart, and actually really challenging the way that we're working. And I think that can only lead to great innovation. So some of the questions that they're asking are just like, why and how are you doing it like that? It's not, and perhaps we haven't had those sorts of questions previously. But there's also apprenticeships to upskill. And I think that's an area where we can really start to reduce the barriers to thinking about apprenticeship. So I talked earlier about some of the commercial awareness, for example. So there are apprenticeships in leadership, whether that be team leadership, whether that be senior leadership. So, learning on the job to develop your commercial awareness, your financial awareness is really key to these organisations scaling. And that way, then some of those who've been through senior leader apprenticeships are really thinking about taking on the science and engineering apprentices as well.
That is really interesting what you said there, because perhaps there is still a bit of almost a misconception about apprenticeships that it is school leavers, college leavers. But interesting you said there about leadership apprenticeships and so on. I mean, how easy is it for HR or senior management to get access to information about apprentices that they might be able to either bring on board, or apprenticeships they might be able to to start with existing staff.
Yeah, so I won't deny it's a complex landscape out there for apprenticeships.
Okay.
There are about 650, 700 standards. So if you're looking at even things like your digital strategy, for example, and looking at data analysis and data science and bioinformatics, you can really look at sort of that nub of talent. So when you're recruiting, who's got the potential, and then really start to develop staff through apprenticeships. But there are various sources, so National Apprenticeship Service, the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. There are various places you can go. I think the Advanced Therapies Apprenticeship community has got some great programs across science and engineering, and they're just starting to look at that digital space as well as now. And that's a group of that's the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult working with a group of small and medium-sized organisations to influence provision. I think perhaps for larger organisations, if you go to a training provider with a large cohort and they say, yes, we can deliver that. If you're a small organisation and you're just thinking about one, by joining forces with other smaller organisations, you've got that buying power with training providers to deliver the sorts of experiences that you want for the off-the-job training. And then on the job is learning exactly that. It's learning from everybody in the workplace. It's picking up all of the skills and the behaviours that you want in your talent and that you develop. And it's a great retention tool.
I suppose sharing as many examples of people who've been through different programs and 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 advanced themselves, but also advanced the companies they work for. I suppose the more and more that is shared around, the more people will allow apprenticeships more and more into their organisations. For people who are watching the podcast, what we'll also do is put a series of links accompanying this as well. So anything that Kate mentioned a few minutes ago, we'll also make sure there's some links to external resources that people can access. But from your experience, how would you say that attitudes to apprenticeships have maybe evolved over the last, say, 5 years or so?
Yeah, so I think they have evolved. So there's been a big push in England in particularly on reform of apprenticeships. They're no longer focused on the trades. There are some quality apprenticeships in trades, and I think they're doing an exceptional job. But there are some really good apprenticeships now, degree apprenticeships in particular, for our sector. If you're thinking about progression, levels 5 and 6 for technician scientists, for chemical engineering. There are some really high quality apprenticeships for new talent. Also, some great apprenticeships for upskilling, so master's level apprenticeships, and we have a cohort of apprentices going through the research scientist, for example. So that's a really nice, well structured graduate type program that small and medium sized companies can get really good access to. And if you are a small and medium sized company, it's 95% funded, so it doesn't cost you very much either. So you've got the structure and you've got the funding.
That's incredible, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's very hard to find reasons to not at least want to explore it further. I mean, how long do apprenticeships typically last for? Is there quite a variety in length of time, or is there a bit of a sort of standard commitment from both sides?
So the definition of an apprenticeship is that it has to be over 12 months. But it depends on the starting point and the end point in terms of the duration. Things like the senior leadership apprenticeship are generally about 3 years. The degree apprenticeships that we have in lab science and technician scientists, they're 3 to 5 years. So you're retaining somebody for a considerable length of time within your business. So they're with you for all of that time. And if you look at some of our cell and gene therapy organisations, there's a considerable amount of change that happens in that 3 to 5 years for those organisations. As part of a cohort, if there is considerable change in a negative way, so the organisation perhaps isn't growing as much as you would like, then we have also been able to transfer people between organisations because of the skills and the knowledge that they're gaining. In fact, we've had one apprentice that I think we're on the third company that they're with, but the skills and the knowledge that they're taking with them,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay.
and the behaviours that they're demonstrating throughout. So things like your good laboratory practice and your good manufacturing practice, they're quite difficult skills and behaviours to have in a new graduate, because you've been quite used to doing things in a university lab. If you've developed your scientific knowledge always working in that type of environment. Those are really valuable skills.
Absolutely. And I know one of the other challenges as well is that people coming into organizations within the advanced therapy sector, maybe fresh out of uni, coming in to be, for example, a manufacturing scientist, where maybe that's going to be the first time of actually working within a regulated GMP environment. That can be quite a, it's very different to working in an academic lab. It's very different to anything that they might have encountered before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for everybody. And I remember you mentioning before that there are some really exciting innovations from certain companies, people who can do virtual clean rooms, and the opportunity to use sort of virtual reality to experience what it might be like working in that kind of environment before they actually make a commitment to go into, whether it's even an apprenticeship or actually going into a full-time permanent position in that kind of environment.
Yeah, so we've worked with a number of different companies. So we've worked particularly with 4Plus, who are an immersive reality company.
Okay.
They've developed some GMP training within virtual reality. So you can do virtual gowning, you can have a tour of a virtual facility. It's all based around the Cell and Gene Catapult Manufacturing Centre. You can do virtual mopping, which doesn't sound very exciting, but cleaning of an aseptic processing suite is really important. And so if you don't get that right, you're really impacting the product. So we've had a number of apprentices go through that program, and what it actually does, it doesn't replace physical training. You'll never replace physical gowning training, but it does reduce the anxiety, the nervousness about going in a clean room and mucking it up. Because if you go in a virtual clean room, you can drop stuff on the floor and you can start again, and it doesn't have any impact. You can drop your gown, and it doesn't cost anything to replace a new one. You just start the training again. So it does reduce that level of anxiety. It also gives people who perhaps aren't going to be working in that type of environment an understanding about how they work with people who are. So I remember working in clean rooms, and people have just said, can you just go and pop in and do this? You can't just pop into a clean room. You have to go through all of the gowning, and you have to be, really, really strict about the procedures that you follow. So for people to have an understanding of that, that's great. But then also to give people a view of what it's like in a clean room. I think for those maybe even transferring across sectors, you think actually no one's ever, unless you've been in a clean room, you've never experienced it. You don't know what that's like to work in. So you don't understand why we have to do all the documentation and all the way that we have to do things. So the virtual reality has been great. We're also working with Sheffield University and AMRC on augmented reality. So this is really looking at how you can visualize your manufacturing procedures on the piece of equipment that you're working on. So really helping to, reduce the procedural complexity. So there's lots of really cool tech that we're using in the space at the moment.
And no one's going to hold you to this, by the way, but what's your vision for where the advanced therapy sector could be in, let's say, another 5 years' time? As it's been moving so quickly, particularly within the UK. I know the UK is very much, it's one of the countries leading the way in new innovations in advanced therapies. Where can you see the industry going from here?
Yeah, so I know there's going to be considerable growth. So we've done the skills demand survey, which has shown how much growth there is going to be in terms of the number of people we need in the sector. So there is considerable growth. I know that finance and the investment that are coming into the sector, this year was a record year for investment. So there is considerable investment and there's considerable growth. I guess I would like to see the UK as sort of that centre for cell and gene therapy manufacturing. We're world leading in research, and we've got sort of the largest cluster outside of the US in Stevenage. Can we expand that and be, really world leading in our manufacturing processes for cell and gene therapies? Because that really ultimately leads to life changing medicines for patients. And that's why I'm in this business. I really want to make a difference to patients. And so to think that we can get these real life changing medicines out there and into patients, and that be focused in the UK, would be immense.
That's so exciting. I mean, there's a reason why we calling this podcast Placing People First. It's the reason why it's our tagline in Next Phase, is that it is all about the patients. It's all about enhancing their lives. It's all about saving lives. It's all about coming up with incredible new treatments. And behind all of that, of course, are having the right people in place, and whether they're people who come in at entry level and trained up through an extensive apprenticeship scheme, whether it's somebody who's maybe come from other industries and moved across into cell and gene, whether it's somebody who can take advantage of more senior level apprenticeships and internal training programs. There's so many different exciting ways that companies can and have, I guess, to be innovative and to try new ideas. So it's really exciting. Kate, I'm so grateful to you for coming on to the podcast today. I know that there's an event coming up, isn't there, in a couple of weeks' time in Discovery Park? Was it the 22nd of March? Just wondered what you can maybe say about that event, why it might be of interest and who it might be of interest to.
Yeah, there's a couple of events coming up. So at Discovery Park, there's the Life Science UK, and it's very focused around skills. So there's a broad selection of speakers. That's a virtual event, so really easily accessible for everybody. There's also the Royal Society event at the end of March. We've got an early talent section in that event that's focused around and COVID and the lessons learned from COVID. And we've got some really exciting apprentices speaking there who've been involved in the development of the vaccines across that drug development pipeline. So yeah, lots of exciting events. We've also got Scottish Apprenticeship Week next week. So we'll be doing lots of events across Scotland around all the different apprenticeship programmes that are available up there.
Excellent. And some of these are events people can attend virtually as well as in person?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we can put the links into the chat.
Okay, excellent. Yes. So anyone who's interested and who's watching this, then we'll put all of the links in here, and please do get in touch if you have any questions or would like some further information. So Kate, thank you again for coming on board. So Kate Barclay, a fantastic advocate for new innovations within the advanced therapy sector, and join us next time for our next edition of the Placing People First podcast.
Thank you very much, Steve.